Hello and welcome to the Kalashusky Family Album. Thank you for visiting. Born of the marriage between Peter Kalashusky and Anna Zared, Martin lived in the area of Kiev, Russia, now the Ukraine, until he was 26 years old. He married Mary Anna Kobolansky, daughter of Kasper Kobolansky and Eva Jakubowski. There they had one son, John. He arrived in the USA in 1909 and homesteaded in North Dakota. Mary and son John joined Martin in 1910, where they lived until 1923. During that time, they had 11 children, 2 of whom died from flu in infancy. The family moved to Inno, Wisconsin, and then to Detroit, where Martin found a job with Henry Ford at the Highland Park Model T plant, where he was paid $5 per day. Martin served in the Russian Army and fought in the Russo-Japanese War from 1904 to 1905. While fighting as an artillery sergeant, his position was overrun by Japanese cavalry, and all but 2 of Martin's men were killed. During the battle, Martin received a bayonet wound, but managed to hold off the enemy until reinforcements arrived and defeated the attackers. Tsar Nicholas awarded him the title of Knight of St. George and the St. George Cross Medal. He received the sum of 10.66 rubles and 66 kopeka as a pension each month. Mary lived with Martin until he died on March 13, 1935. She remarried Houston Dishuk until he died of cancer in 1952. When Mary married Martin, her parents became landowners because of Martin's title as a Knight of St. George. Her parents stayed in Russia until the Communist Revolution, where her father died while defending his livestock from the Red Army. The fate of her mother is unknown. She died in her Highland Park home at 160 Richton on February 6, 1955. She died of a heart attack, and she was found by her son Victor, who answered the rescue call while on duty as a fireman. Here is the last known picture of the Kalashusky family together. Starting front and center was Thomas. Next to Thomas is Kasper. Just behind Kasper is Victor, who was my father. Behind Victor was John, the eldest. Next to John is Peter. Next to Peter is Antoinette. Next to Antoinette is Anna. Next to Anna is Edward. And the smallest one in the group was Adam. John Kalish, the eldest of the Kalish siblings, married Sonia Sokol, and they had 3 children, Lydia, Raymond, and Ronald. All 3 children have since passed away. John achieved the rank of lieutenant, working as a fireman for the city of Highland Park, Michigan. John kept most of the family records and lived the longest of the Kalashusky children. He was a nationally ranked civilian pistol marksman and placed 3rd in the national finals at Camp Perry, Ohio. Peter was the 2nd child and the first to be born in the USA, in Glen Ullin, North Dakota. Peter never married. He was a glider pilot during World War II. He was considered to be a production genius, developing several inventions for both farm and industry. He was also thought to have discovered the ability to wash his hands in molten steel, a trick he discovered that after washing his hands to an extreme, the molten steel had nothing to cling to and fell away from the skin. Antoinette, or Auntie Kalish, was married to John Lamb, and they had 2 children, Jan and Charles, or Chuck. They were later divorced, and Auntie remained a single parent. She attended nursing school and became an employee of the City of Highland Park Recreation Department, where she became a counselor at Camp Rankin, a one-week camp experience for children in the 9th grade. She had a home in Lake Orion, Michigan. Anna, or Ann Kalish, was the 4th child to be born at Kalashusky. She later married Joe Elwert and lived in an area of Detroit outside of Highland Park. They had 2 children, Joanne and Robert, or Butch. Both children became well known as dancers and lived in Las Vegas for many years. Ann passed away while living in San Diego, California. Adam Kalish was one of 4 brothers that fought and survived World War II. He became an owner of Owens Welding, a specialty welding shop in Hazel Park, Michigan. Adam was married to Betty Yochane, and they adopted 2 children, Sue Ann and David. They lived in a lovely home on Lake Orion, in Lake Orion, Michigan. Victor was a fireman for the City of Highland Park, and he retired after 25 years on the job. He then opened a business called Revivatone, a therapeutic vibrator that he sold at various state fairs and home shows across the country. He married Jeline Bryson, and they had 2 children, Douglas and Edward Martin Kalish. Edward Kalish was married to Virginia Lillis, and they had 2 girls, Dawn and Dina. They eventually divorced and went their separate ways. Edward was a bombardier during World War II and was shot down over Germany. All the crew but he and the co-pilot were killed. After capture, they were forced marched and barely escaped being shot by their own forces when the convoy was mistaken for the enemy. Once again, his was the only column that survived. He spent 2 years in a concentration camp and was rescued by the American forces at war's end. This is a picture of the entire crew. Each person marked with the red X perished. Thomas, or Tommy Kalish, never married and spent most of his life living with family members. He retired from the Air Force as a staff sergeant after serving in World War II as a paratrooper in the Army. He eventually took his own life. Casper married Edith Polis, and they had 2 girls, Joyce and Gail. He worked for many years for Ford Motor Company as a pipe fitter and also owned a bar known as the Cozy Corner, located on Hamilton Avenue in Avalon in Highland Park. The proud mother of 4 servicemen, Mary Kalashusky was proud to display her 4-star home during World War II. There were many newspaper stories about the brothers returning home from the war. This was a story from the Detroit News. Here we see Sister Ann, Victor, John, Edward, and Peter all together again shortly following World War II. The Kalashusky name was officially changed to Kalish in 1942. Rest in peace, Kalashuskys.